So last show we had someone asking a question about IMSI, which is when we do IVF and we select the very best sperm using a special modified technique to see if that would yield a benefit. And my knowledge of that was that it didn't really yield a benefit. But I wanted to go look it up because it'd been a while since I'd taken a look at that, and lo and behold, the Cochrane meta-analysis database actually did have a relatively recent 2020 study that could provide some information for us. So I thought, because one of you was watching and asked that question, maybe we should go into a little bit more depth and we can explore whether or not this technique has a benefit or not. And so I looked at the Cochrane meta-analysis, and that's what we're going to be sharing with you tonight. So essentially, when we first started doing IVF, they used to take the eggs and they would drop the eggs into a dish with the sperm, and they would kind of pray overnight that it fertilized, check the next day, and if it fertilized, they would grow them out to day 3 and then transfer them. Then we started growing them out to day 5. This was very helpful for many people, but mainly designed to help those who had tubal factor, because you were bypassing the fallopian tubes by removing the eggs, taking the sperm, putting them together. You make your embryo, and now you can put your embryo back into the uterus. You're bypassing the fallopian tube. So if you'd had chlamydia, gonorrhea, previous ectopics, endometriosis with damage, this would facilitate getting pregnant. So then people started wondering, is there a way to help those who have significant male factor where the quality of the sperm is so compromised that it's not working? We can't get the kind of success that we want. And the reality was that they developed ICSI. So ICSI is when you do intracytoplasmic sperm injection. So you basically take the sperm, you get the tail of the sperm to become inactivated, and then you take the head of the sperm, you're injecting it into the cytoplasm of the egg. That allows the DNA from the sperm to then enter into the nucleus of the egg. And at that point, it can then go ahead and start to fertilize. And this allows men whose sperm did not have the capacity to fuse with the egg and combine with the egg and go on to produce fertilization to do so by essentially forcing it. So the problem with ICSI is it doesn't always work. We still have some men whose sperm is so compromised that you're either not getting success in fertilization, or you might get success in fertilization, but we're not necessarily able to always choose the most outstanding sperm. And so how can we improve on that? How could we find better sperm? So around the 2000s, someone with the last name Bartoov, B-A-R-T-O-O-V, in 2002 published that there was an alternative approach where you used ultra high magnification of the sperm, and we've got a picture to show you, so we'll pop that up for you, to look very, very closely at the sperm and then select them based on their morphological criteria, which means what do they look like under the microscope. So you can see in the picture, and I think we should have that up for you, that there is 6,000-fold magnification looking at each individual sperm. So you can really get a good look at the head, the neck, and the tail. So each sperm has 3 parts. There's a tail, a neck, and a head piece. And you can get a very detailed look at those 3 pieces of the sperm anatomy and then determine from that, is this genuinely a normal sperm or not? Whereas, as you can see in the ICSI picture that's there, that it's not nearly as detailed. You're a lot further away. So naturally one would think, well, if I'm picking better sperm, should I have a better outcome? And we'd all expect the answer to probably be yes. So the initial studies on this suggested that maybe there was a benefit. And the criteria that they used to decide whether it's a normal sperm or not are 6 subcellular organelles. So they're looking at the acrosome, they're looking at the post-acrosomal lamina, the neck, the mitochondria in the sperm, the tail, and the nucleus. So these are the pieces that they were examining to decide if it had all of these check marks for these various components of the sperm, that made it a better sperm, and therefore maybe that selection criteria was allowing for a better yield in terms of your results with live birth, decreased miscarriage, higher clinical pregnancy rates. So the authors from the Cochrane Library took a look at this. So what they did was they started off, and we've got it on figure 1 here for you, with a whole huge pile of studies that they screened that met at least the criteria of saying IMSI. And then they wanted to expand that to explore other studies that were mentioned and get all of the papers that maybe had something to do with this, and then narrow it down to only the ones that were high quality. So as you can see, they start off with 9 trials that were in their most recently published version. They had 535 records identified through database searching, and then 1 more additional through other sources. By the time they go through it all, they reduce to about 306 because of duplicate studies that have been presented or published. They had to exclude 279 of the 306 after reading the abstract because it didn't meet that randomized controlled criteria they were looking for. They examined an additional 27 that they looked at, and from those 27 they had to exclude 15 more, and then they put in a few more studies, and at the end of all this hodgepodge they ended up with 13 trials that were included in the quantitative synthesis and in the analysis for this study. So again, this is really important to understand when we're looking at the research that we value, because they started with 535 trials and they ended up with 13. So keep in mind that a lot of this stuff that we look at has to do with what my professors used to call crap in and crap out. So if you have poor data going into these analyses, you're not going to get a valid answer, and it's not a justifiable conclusion that you can reach. So they tried to do their best to get really good data as much as possible. Now, when they do these meta-analyses, they do score the quality of the data, and depending on various factors, it can be low quality, moderate, or high. So I'll go through that with you in this. So we're going to look at their first outcome, which is in figure 4. And the first thing that they looked at in figure 4 was the most important outcome, which is live birth. So they wanted to know if there was a higher rate of live birth in the couples that used IMSI compared to couples that did not use IMSI but used ICSI instead. And so as you can see in the graph there, most of the studies, there's 5 of them included there, most of them are very variable in terms of the results. The first one showed no benefit because the confidence interval crosses 1, though it favors the side of IMSI. The next one is a wash, it didn't really show anything. The next one favored ICSI instead of IMSI. The next one kind of more strongly favored IMSI. The next one crosses 1 again. It only favored the IMSI barely, and none of those are statistically significant because all of their confidence intervals cross 1 except for that Mangoli study, which is off to the side. And so when you look down at the total, and it's circled at the bottom there, you can see that that little diamond that's marked is sitting on the 1 line, and when it's on the 1 line, that means that it is not statistically significant. Now it's barely favoring that the IMSI might be better, but it's not statistically significant, and therefore there is no improvement in using IMSI for live birth. So they quickly dispelled or dispensed with the concept that this is going to improve your live birth. Based on these studies, it does not improve your live birth. So then the authors turned to figure 5 and they said, well, what about miscarriage per clinical pregnancy? Can we reduce the number of miscarriages by doing this because we're selecting that better sperm? And we certainly know from DNA fragmentation studies that the higher the DNA fragmentation, the higher the chance that you're going to end up with a miscarriage. And it's very staggering. We have another Fact or Fiction on that. So if you go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, you'll see there that we've done one on DNA fragmentation. It's a almost 12-fold, 1,200% increase in risk of miscarriage if you have high DNA frag. So the concept would be maybe if we select these better sperm, hopefully they have less fragmentation as well, and therefore maybe we can reduce the miscarriage rates. So they analyze that too. And if you look at figure 5 again, you'll see that most of these data points are crossing that 1 line, that dark line going up and down, which means they are not statistically significant. In fact, none of those studies showed any statistical significance at all. All of them crossed the 1,
And when you got down to the bottom in that total, again, it should be circled there. You can see that that diamond mark at the bottom where they have the total shows there is no statistically significant improvement in miscarriage risk. Now, the diamond is more on the side of IMSI, but keep in mind that when it's not statistically significant, it means there is no difference. So I don't want anyone to get confused about that. This is showing that, again, it's not actually helping you for miscarriage. So you can blow up the sperm to 6,000, fold magnification. It's still not going to make that much of a difference for you. So the final step they took was to say, well, what about clinical pregnancy? So remember, clinical pregnancy is where we see a heartbeat and not necessarily the live birth, but can we just increase the number of patients that are getting pregnant? So again, as you look at the data, now it's a little bit different. The first study shows it's statistically significantly better. This is figure 6 now. The next study shows it crosses 1, so do the next few. The 6th study shows a statistically significant benefit for IMSI. It's off to the right. It does not cross 1. The next 2, same thing. The next one again shows a benefit. So overall, when they looked at this, they said that when you analyze everything, there's a 23% increase in the risk of clinical pregnancy when using IMSI. So it's a slight increase in success. It's not huge, but you are going to see a clinical pregnancy increase using this technique. Now, how important is this? Well, the truth is it's probably not that important because we know that the miscarriage risk is no different. And we know that the live birth data is no different, which means even if we are seeing this increase in clinical pregnancy, some of those are going on to miscarry, which at the end of it all is evening out the live births. So while it looks kind of promising, the reality is it's not showing a benefit because we know that the live births are not increased. So the authors then go through the study and analyze it, and they talk about their data. And what they actually concluded with was it was inconclusive because they can't see a benefit for live birth, but they felt that the data was so low in quality that they can't make a definitive statement about this yet. What's involved in this process? Well, you have to have a very powerful microscope, and you have to have the ability to select those individual sperm under that magnification and make sure you capture them and then use them. So it is fairly complicated to do. It does add a lot of time, and keep in mind that the timing of when you do your ICSI has been shown to have a very significant impact on the outcomes. And so I know in a previous center I've worked at, we've seen that doing ICSI very quickly can result in very high fertilization, but it's not actually shown to be the best in terms of the outcome of embryo quality, whereas now my embryologist is quite strict about the amount of time it takes to do the egg stripping and how long you should let them sit for. And based on how long the current studies and data show, we're getting really outstanding embryo quality and extraordinarily high success rates. So it is important to make sure that you're not using a lot of time trying to find individual best sperm when it's not really showing a significant benefit. So at the end of the day, they said essentially, we know that there is a potential that this could be helpful, but we're really not seeing it right now in the data that we have. And therefore, at present, there is no evidence to support the use of this. So is it a fact or a fiction that IMSI can help your fertility case? At present, it actually looks like it's a fiction. There is no direct evidence that supports the concept that IMSI by itself, where we are magnifying the sperm and checking to see how good the quality of the shape of the sperm or the organelles within the sperm are, is going to assist you to achieve that, sort of brass ring or gold ring at the end of the day, which is live birth. They are not seeing that, and therefore it is a fiction. It is not going to help you. So thank you so much for joining us for Fertility Fact or Fiction. This will be up on YouTube. Make sure you like, comment, share, and we would love to have you subscribe. There are loads of videos there on all the various topics that we talk about, and we post them every week, including the question and answer session that follows. So don't hesitate to jump on there and take a look at any of the other things that you want to see.